Hey, I'm Harry, one of the most famous gingers in esports, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel, home of the most famous ginger in esports.
If you saw the first major this year, you know Aurora can blow a whole blast. But while that might leave a sour taste in your mouth if you're a fan of Aurora, or just when they can be good in the game, the flavour blow whole blast from gamer subs won't. Like on this special edition here, and basically once this is sold out, they'll never be selling it ever again. But as you can see on the page here, it says the combination of the tropical flavours mango, coconut and passion fruit with a finishing touch of lime. And I thought, it's interesting, because not only is that an interesting blend, sounds all tropical, doesn't it? There's a delicious flavours that'll all meld together well. Well, you know what? Madja might rarely get his four talents to combine together into a satisfying blend, but this flavour was developed such that all four flavours work in perfect unison, yet are each pleasantly distinguishable in their own right. You can get 10% off anything on the GamerSupps website using my code Thorin, Thorin. You can have the GamerSupps to get you going in the day. You can have the AFK blend to put yourself to sleep. And actually, in the case of Madja, he could obviously just put himself to sleep and he wouldn't even need to put that much water in. His own tears could just go in there, mix, and then he could just fucking drink it, couldn't he? At least it tastes more nicely than just those salty tears going into his mouth as he goes, I'm sorry. Guys, I'd just like to apologise for letting you down for the checks notes every time except that shit PGL. Like, you get the point. Anyway, 10% off GamerSupps using my code. Aurora has fucking blown it and been eliminated from the Starladder Budapest Major without even cracking the top 16. They didn't even make it to stage 3 in CS. Certain T-sides I thought were very much stage 3. Aurora, by the way, it's not like they're a bad team. They are ranked the 9th best team in the world by HLTV right now. At times over the year, by the way, they have been up to like 5th. I think they were at 4th even maybe briefly. They were even consistently at 5th at one point across like the end of the first season. The bad thing is, a month ago, they won PGL Masters Bucharest. By the way, if you don't know, there were 2 PGL Bucharest this year. One was called Masters. Unfortunately, it did have a limited field. But here's the true irony of winning that event. Look at the field. It's basically this major, the stage that they just got eliminated from. The teams that are, think of the teams that are in this stage now: Aurora, 3D Max, Astralis, Fnatic, Bait, NIP, Team Liquid, MIBR. This is basically, this could be stage 2 of the major. You won a tournament that had all these teams in it. Admittedly, you went 3-2 in the Swiss and lost to Saw and Heroic, which is bullshit, but whatever. You beat Liquid and Astralis and Fnatic, so it's all good. They earlier this year made the finals of Blast Bounty Spring and DWC, as well as obviously the finals of the PGL they won. They were in the playoffs of every single LAN as Eternal Fire and Aurora this year, with the exception of the 2 majors and ESL Pro League 22, for whatever reason. So the majors obviously being the biggest pressure ones. The problem with Aurora is quite simple at the top of the video. They are theoretically one of the absolute best teams in Counter-Strike. Theoretically, they're elite. But in practice, they don't quite live up to that. And in such an unsatisfying way, they become detestable, even though the joke is, I actually sort of enjoy watching them play when they're in their pomp and when they're hitting their stride, and especially when they sock with those crazy Xantaras, Woxic haymakers, some of the best teams in the world, in the mouth. Like, remember, this was absolutely a team that accomplished a miracle this year. They were the team that at the beginning of the year, in the first LAN match of the new Vitality, beat them in a best of 3 on LAN, 2-0, and only 1 game even got to the end of the rounds of regulation. And you can see here, people like Ziwa were just sleeping. Rops is just actually having a bad fucking game. Xantara's body bagging. Woxic doing well. Jota's out there. They were fragging the face off of Vitality. Well, remember, that's the Vitality that lost 1 best of 3 in that entire first season. That was the loss. They only lost 2 matches. The other one was the BO1 to Legacy. The first match in that stage at the major when Legacy was already warmed up from the previous stage. So on paper, this should be a fabulous team. Depending on the time of year, as previously referenced, once you get past whoever your top 3 is, so in the first season, that would have been Vitality, Mouse, Spirit, arguably. Once you get to this season, that would obviously be, at the end, Furia, Vitality, you choose. Falcons, maybe. You could throw Mouse in there if you want to get cheeky, or Spirit because they won the first 2 events. Once you get past whatever your top 3 are, this is immediately one of the teams you have to think about in terms of who could win the event next, who could be dangerous to the top 3. They immediately come into your top 5, like they're on your radar, but then where are all the championships? Where are all their trophies? They've got the one at a limited field, what essentially looks like a stage 2 of a major. That's the one tournament they were able to actually win. So this is a team that you think of. You think dangerous. Of course, they all hit at the same time. They can rock any team. Capable. You've seen them do it against teams. You've seen them have those epic maps even in series they lose. Finally, deadly. When they actually are on their game, they're not just dangerous and we've got to fade them or they can fight with us. They've got so much firepower and so much also in superstar players Antares. They can 13-7 motherfuckers. Not even just win. Like, when they win, they can destroy you. It actually tends to be the close games that they lose, sadly. But if you have watched them play this year, and by the way, that was their last match of the Tier 1 circuit, they are donezo for 2025. There's no rewriting the story or adding an extra chapter. There is clearly something fundamentally wrong with this as a team that prevents them from winning big events. And also at the majors / the prestige events. Because that's another thing. I told you that all those playoffs, except the 2 majors and Pro League, I'll show you later at the 4 prestige events how they've played. It is not a pretty picture, even if they're playing the same or lesser opposition. So they came into this major as a team legitimately expected to make the playoffs at a minimum. I think beyond that, by the way, they on paper should have been considered capable of a run. Maybe you can even upset a big dog even if you don't win the event yourself. You think of some of the huge wins they had this year. I said already about that Vitality one, right? But go beyond that. How about when Na'Vi in Season 1 was still considered a top team, beat them 2-0 at Blast Lisbon. Furia, when they just made this new roster and had that mini run at Astana, so it's the same squad that's Furia now, they were just inexperienced back then, they 2-1 them. AWC, Falcons was coming online in that second season, showing they had the skills, they 2-zipped them. And Furia, more recently in the second season, the same Furia you're seeing dominate the world now, well, win the games against the best teams in the world, 2-0 them at Fisher Playground. So they've had the big wins, but you do notice those are the only ones they've had. And, for example, one was against Na'Vi, who people don't care about now, and one was against Furia when they were just getting going. There's a reason why they could have had like 2 or 3 times more massive upsets and wins over elite teams than I just listed there. Tons of people, including myself, had them as a 3-0 team for this stage. Because you think about the very good games they play, and when they hit hard, and you think to yourself, I'd be a fool not to pick them. They could have just walked across teams 13-5, 13-4, and been straight into the next stage, and you'd feel like a fool for wasting that spot, wouldn't you? Now they didn't even get through as a 3-1, 3-2 team. They failed to even reach 2 match wins. They didn't even get to the 2-2 game. They played M80 and won a just 2 game there. They lost to FaZe Clan, who looked appalling in stage 1 and is clearly mildly limited firepower-wise compared to Aurora and what you think of as past FaZe teams. Then they lost to James Paravision, who everyone thought were frauds before this event, hadn't beat anyone close to an elite team on LAN. And then they got to the BO3. They played Astralis. I even actually bet, by the way, on Aurora here, because looking at the veto, Astralis is only approaching world class on 1 map, Nuke. And it was going to be fine. The veto would still have the 2 maps that Aurora should win on. Do you want another punchline? They actually won the fucking Nuke opening map against Astralis, then lost the second map, and then the third map lost 11-13. And if you saw the map that they lost on, that is the most classic fuck-up map of Aurora if you have ever seen it. It doesn't matter what the win rate is, they can either destroy you, and Xantares just runs all over you on the T side, and on CT side they just frag out Loxic wins 1vx's post plant or retaking the site, or they do these super close losses or OT losses because Magic just cannot call the end of his T side. He calls a stupid same, repeats, they just get lost in the middle of the round, they try to rush the site late, sometimes don't even get the bomb down. They are notorious for blowing games on this map, and I'd say also a bit of Inferno as well. The problem with Aurora is simple. We have a saying in England that is, they flatter to deceive. As in, they have good games and play well, and it makes you think they've done it, they've cracked it, they're actually there. This roster is capable of so much, they can look so good. On their day, by the way, when they look good, they look like 9 out of 10 levels of like dominance in CS. The problem is, on their average day, they're probably a 7 out of 10. And on their bad day, they probably have the lowest floor of anyone approaching an elite team. That's how they ended up as 9th at this point at the end of the year. They might go down to, for real, like a 2.5 out of 10. They can be outrageously bad if they are really, really bad. Or they just start to feel the pressure and they can't adapt to it. So the problem here is this. The big wins, their ability to crush teams, that makes them always look dangerous and scary. That's always in the back of your mind that can happen to almost any team out there. They are the kind of team that wins big, smashes even top teams 13-6, but they are absurdly fragile when pressure arrives, either in the form of where the tournament's at or the right opponent. And they just break at some point in time and then they fall apart. And they very, very rarely ever recover unless actually they're playing another team that has pressure issues or just a much worse team. So just like this major, they have so many 10-13, 11-13 OT losses. Even their one title, let's just go back and look at that again for a second, was against Legacy, an inexperienced team in the final. They were 2 maps up in a best of 5. They could have closed it on Train, one of the maps that they've been trying to specialise on since the Vertigo and Anubis went away. They lost that in OT. They lost Inferno heavily, and then they barely won against a team that themselves has issues in close games, by the way. Against Legacy, Pitt squeaked it through 13-11 to win this trophy. Not even that good a field, and what an unimpressive way to win the trophy. They just clearly are such a flawed team when they're in all these situations. They gave the Mongols their only title this year at EWC. That tournament was right there. If you don't know, earlier in the year, they were even a team that could beat the Mongols. But at EWC, the one tournament Mongols won for the 500k, they all got all the way to the final. Look at this. Just beat Falcons 2-0. Get the fuck out, all those superstar players. Meanwhile, Mongols had to scrap with Vitality, the best team at the time, to get to the final. In the final, Mongols wins their best map, 16-14, OT. Aurora's right there on Mongols' best map. Next, it's a good game on Dust 2. The third game is just a complete capitulation in a BO5. So yeah, tell you what, you take the extra 250k in the trophy, mate, the big trophy. I'll just win like some shitty PGL Bucharest later on, if I can get like a dog shit team there, but not as good as you. Fucking hell. That's what this team's up to. In the other final of this year, the Blast Spouty Spring, the one where they beat Vitality, you beat Vitality, close game, sure, but you look great doing it. Then you beat G2 when they still had Monacy. Close series, but you get it done. The Anubis was still there at the time. You go to the final against Spirit, who's the major winners, but hey, it's a BO5. Spirit doesn't have the craziest map pool. You win your Anubis, the opener, in OT. Awesome. You get absolutely ragdolled on the next 3 maps. Absolutely destroyed. And even some of these are maps you play. And before you hit me with the like, yeah, but that's Spirit, Thorin. Like, this was a Spirit before they had Zwei, Tene. This was the one with Magix and with Zontix, and everyone was flaming them for Magic's life game, winning them the major and going, they're underpowered. It's just the fucking Donk and Shiro show. And then does Zontix win the odd round? Does Magix not play that bad? Can Chopper call a decent game? And actually, Team Spirit famously, as I say, didn't have the craziest deep map pool. So you look in finals, this team not only let other people off the hook, they capitulate. And they could have lost that one to Legacy as well. But if you look at the results they're having before these finals, on paper, they should be capable of winning all of them. They could have 3 trophies right now. They could have Blast Bounty, EWC, and that PGL Masters Bucharest. The problem with Aurora is they are the opposite of a team with character. They have skill. They have players who are characters, but they don't have character. They don't have grit, determination, like fucking team play that merges together when someone's playing badly, lift each other up with your spirits or motivate each other or take a timeout to have the genius tactical call or take a breather and reset and come back in the game. They are a team that front run on you, and if you get them on the ropes, man alive, this team, they will just get their heads socked off. Even if it's slow death by 1,000 cuts or it's just getting rocked with that big haymaker. The obvious strengths of the team are right there. But you think about the flaws and eventually they overwhelm when you look at the big picture. They can seemingly only impress versus bad teams or when they're against an elite team, but they're considered an underdog. Even then, by the way, they actually win, as I said, far less often than you think against those elite teams. If you want to talk about their strengths, there's an obvious immediate one. It's firepower, isn't it? This is for the whole year. Just this roster. So this is Eternal Fire and Aurora. For the whole year, they have 3 players above a 1.6 rating. Zantares those are good numbers when you consider how many fucking maps he's played. That's nuts. Almost 200 maps. That's a very good stat line. He's played plenty of elite teams. Wicadia, now he doesn't have to be a full star, gets to shine. Woxic frags well as an AWP and has that clutch factor. Jota, when in mind this is supposed to be a support element, those are pretty decent numbers. Yeah, Madge's not doing very well, and I think it's more the in-game leading aspect I'm worried about. You go on the T side, these are pretty decent fragging numbers all in all. CT side, they frag out. They're really dangerous. On T side, obviously they live and die off as Antares. Look at this. That's one of the highest attempt rates you'll see for an elite team or top 10 team. Look at the success rate. And then look at Wicadia's success rate and then Woxic success rate. So I'll tell you what, all these things here tell you, you'd think they must have a fucking crazy T side. We'll get to that later. The stats will actually blow your mind. I think you will actually legitimately be shocked. So you look at the firepower of their team. I'm not joking. If I was to think this year, here are the teams with the biggest firepower. Number 1 in theory is Falcons once they get Kiyosuke. Number 2, I think by the end of the year it would be Furia. Then I'd probably put Vitality number 3 because I think they've got like segmented firepower. And I actually think you could already make the argument Aurora's right there with number 3. I think I can absolutely say that. I think they've got better firepower than most of the other teams. They've got better firepower than Na'Vi. I think they've even got slightly better firepower than Mouse maybe. They're better, way better than Mongols. Forget about FaZe, Astralis, Pain. Liquid on paper has good firepower, but they never had it. This team has real firepower. Zantares is one of the best entry / aggro riflers in the world in Counter-Strike. And takes a lot on his shoulders, by the way. Woxic is a big game player still. He's a clutch AWPer. There's not many of those in the game right now. Wicadia is a solid contributor who doesn't have to be the star and can put you over the top as a 3rd or 2nd fragger. Jota is way too talented to be a 3rd or 4th man. Has really nice aim. Gets it done. By the way, if he ever leaves this team and he does go and he plays off in like a nip or something, he'll frag out. He'll be right up there getting like EVPs and stuff. And then in terms of Madja, I'm not a fan, but I'll tell you what, he is very experienced. Been around a long time, even as an IGL from CS2 through to CS2, and as a player for even longer. He was back in 1.6 playing, and he actually used to be a decently skilled player in the French scene. But the problems are obvious, aren't they? First of all, there's the map pool. Last year, they were Vertigo merchants. That was their super special map they tried to play all the time. And I'm not joking, there were times where they were truly elite and world class on that, and teams had to be scared of them. The problem was a lot of teams obviously permabanned Vertigo. This year, they were Anubis merchants once the Vertigo was gone. Early this year, before that map was removed, they legit might even have been the best team. Even if, by the way, Vitality could beat them on it, I actually think that was by virtue of Vitality's like players and having people like Ziwu and the fact that they were the best team, not that Vitality was like stylistically and in terms of like how they played the map, the best map. I think actually they were this team, Aurora, Eternal Fire back then, were the best team in the world on Anubis. I think that's a totally legit take. You saw they even beat the Spirit with Donk on it, etc. in that final. Now, when those maps went away, they tried to embrace the train. They tried to, but they could never quite establish it to the same extent as an Anubis, Vertigo. So already some of the writing was on the wall, even though once this season, the first season of this year began, they had Jota, which upgraded their skill level. That in theory should have shown they were better, right? That's the worst thing. The map pool dissipating exposed that even though they technically became a better team, they actually became a team less reliable in a series. Like last year, no Jota, they had Calix, who was off playing in Eternal Fire and Tier 2 a million games, plays every other day. This year with Anubis and Jota, they actually legit looked like, hey, they could be a consistent top 5 team. At one point, they were for quite a few months. Since then, though, they've lost some of that steam. And quite frankly, you would actually bet your house against them anytime it's a match that has big-time pressure. If you want to talk about a team that has issues against specific styles, this is what will show you that they are betrayed by tactical deficiencies in this squad. Because I'll tell you two teams that people don't consider elite for most of the year and don't actually think have the firepower to go up with a team like an Aurora. How about French side 3D Max? It's a really extreme one because I don't think any of their players are that good. And none of them should be top 20 at all. They're just a team that has like a 2.5 map pool. But if they get you on that Nuke and Inferno, they've got a chance. Then you have Na'Vi, who has like a decent map pool. Solid players, maybe Bits, World Classic, and Frag with some of the players elsewhere. Wonderful's not bad compared to a Woxic. Aside, obviously, Alexi B's a much better IGL. But the firepower-wise, ever since GL went, no, and GL was playing bad in Season 1. No, these teams don't have the firepower to hang with an Aurora. Well, let me just go and show you their results against these teams this year, and we'll isolate them. Let's do 3D Max first. In theory, a team that can barely get in the top 10 and is irrelevant even if they make a playoffs. So the last time they played them was in April, back when the Anubis was still there, and they managed to lose a series to them 2-1 at the first PGL Bucharest. So you can see they get bodied on Inferno, which, by the way, was the obvious pick of 3D Max, their best map. They win the Anubis big time. Right, Dust 2 decided. Dust 2 is a classic fragging map. It's also a classic French map, but it's absolutely a coin flip for your 3D Max. 3D Max wins in OT because it's a close game. It's pressure. This is a pressure game to make the playoffs. Look how close this loss is. Then we'll go down to the other times they played this team. Before that, they played them in Pro League. That was a very close loss on Anubis and Inferno. They even lost their own map to 3D Max. Then they played them at PGL Cluj-Napoca before that. Oh, look at that. It's a very close win, a very close win. And actually, the one body bag map is fucking 3D Max on their Inferno. You win the Anubis barely, and then you barely squeak through on a Nuke here, which admittedly is a good map for 3D Max, but you're Eternal Fire, for fuck's sake. Before that, they also played them at Katowice. They lost that series too. They got rocked on the Inferno. They barely won in OT, their Anubis. Oh, what am I talking about? They won this one. And they barely won on Dust 2. A map that 3D Max is questionable on. So over the year, mainly in the first season, they went 2-2 against fucking 3D Max. Then let's do Na'Vi, shall we? Admittedly a better team in the first season, but we'll start in reverse order. So they played them at the Thunderpick World Championship on LAN, Group B winners match. They win the Nuke heavily, which was Na'Vi's pick. They lose their own map pick massively on Mirage. And then on Dust 2, they lose 13-11. Against, again, a team that shouldn't be as good at them at fragging. You go down. Before that, they played in ESL Pro League Season 22. They lost that game fairly closely, Dust 2 Nuke. Then they played at PGL Astana. That was the one where obviously Na'Vi made like a top 8 run or something like that. That was also a really close Inferno train series. Then you go back to when it was Eternal Fire. That's the one time they won. They won that one. So they went 2-2 against 3D Max and 1-3 against Na'Vi. Now, you know the firepower in theory is there for Aurora, so what's making them lose these games, boys? The answer's obvious. The tactical style isn't there. Now let's talk about the most obvious elephant in the room. It's the reason I made the video. Pressure. They are fucking dog shit at majors and prestige events. And you can go all the way back for the majors and the prestige events. Let's do it. Here's Madge's Liquipedia. We'll go back to 2024 when they first started to get good, didn't they? Around here towards the end of the year, started to show some skills. Then they got hot. They had a decent run even though they didn't make the playoffs here. They were showing some skills, etc. They go, get through to the major. And at the major, they get through 3-1, opening stage. Elimination stage, 3-1 again. They're beating Vitality for fuck's sake, boys. They're beating FaZe when everyone thought FaZe could be pretty... This was when FaZe was like the number 1 ranked team in the world. They go to the playoffs. They draw Na'Vi. If you don't know, Na'Vi was a 3-2 team. Lost to fucking Spirit, Cloud9. Yes, the Cloud9 without an AWP with Boomich fucking AWPing. And if you remember, close first game, and that's it. Capitulate completely. By the way, that's their best result at a prestige event. This is in the beginning one, the first major of CS2. Then we'll go to the next one. So you go along. Cologne. That was Katowice, 9th to 12th. Cologne, 17th to 20th. This is before Mongols was considered really good, by the way. This is one of the events where they first started to get on the map. Oh yeah, by the way, before that they were playing lands like in fucking India and losing to Mongols as well. You go to the last major of the year. You look here. By then you've already done the Bet Boom where you made the final against Spirit. You beat Mouse. You make the Pro League final and narrowly lose it to Na'Vi. And by the way, I think on paper they should have won that. They're actually the better team of the BO5, but Na'Vi clutched them out. So by this time, you're supposed to be a playoff team at the major again, like you were at the previous one. And 12th to 14th, losing to fucking Astralis. Are you having a laugh? Then you come to this year, Katowice, hey, they made the playoffs, boys. After they came second at the Blast and immediately banged by Mongols. And Mongols famously were considered playoff chokers at this time. So then you go further along, all these playoff runs, but they're just losing a lot of the time to everyone who's decent. They've lost the fucking complexity, for fuck's sake. Then you go to the major, 12th to 14th. 12th to 14th. No top 8. Then you have Cologne, 9th to 12th. Losing to the not good phase with fucking Brokey in it. There's no twists in this team, mate. And then you've come to this major where you've come not even top 16. They just fucking complete gash at fucking prestige events. When the pressure's there, this team just disappears, don't they? And always has with this core going back. Now, I'll tell you an obvious problem they have. I've made it pretty clear. I've talked around it, and now we've centered in on it and targeted, haven't we? It's obviously tactics. So let's go and look on LAN the last 6 months against top 20 teams, and we'll go and look at some T-side stats, shall we? So T-side, round win percentage. Look how far down they are. Look at some of the teams above them. They're all the way down there. Then we'll go to 5v4. All right. They're all right, I guess, when they have a man advantage. By the way, when you have a man advantage, you're really going to test team play. Can you execute what you're trying to do? Because you've got an extra man. You should be able to move that around the map and create mismatches. What about when you're behind in the round and you have to do something like actually fucking call a cool thing out of it? 4v5, look how far down they are. The last 6 months, they're worse than Gamer Legion, by the way. I admit that they play the maps and up to loads of these. Look at the fucking teams. Bates up here. Trade percentage, look where they are. Look how far down they are on the trade percentage. They have the skills, but they can't work together properly. Now let's look at utility. Utility is another way you can move the opposition around, create isolated matchups for yourself, create situations where you can explode on the site. ADR, so we're talking about stuff like grenades here. They're all the way down here. Flash assists, they're here. Like, this is a team getting results, like, in the top 8, sort of. But none of the fucking stats on T-side are getting them in the top 8. They're just fragging out on CT side and then hoping the Xantares show and some Woxic clutches and Jota getting a random kill he shouldn't and Wikidia having a top frag every now and then gets them over the line. I'd be ashamed to be the IGL of a team like this and then be talking trash to people on fucking the internet and acting like I'm big shit. By the way, the eye test tactically is ass. This is the team that's just playing CSDM. You're just watching to watch that fucking Xantares peak in the fucking AK and watch a Woxic clutch. They call so bad late in games. They just repeat calls over and over again and become really obvious. They telegraph the fuck out of calls when they try and slow the game down, by the way. And I've got to say this, I have literally seen them lose rounds without even planting the bomb, including Maggi himself getting into those scenarios. I'll always say this, I've said it many times this year. Give Carrigan this roster and have them speak English. I think they'd already have like 3 trophies at least. Maybe more, because they already made the 3 finals with Maggi. Maybe they'd have 5 trophies. I know that sounds like a crazy statement, but give him peak Xantares opening 30% of the rounds at half success rate. Give him Woxic, who we used to have on mouse back in the day, with fucking Chris J and Baby frozen, and he was fucking around in all the finals. If you give Carrigan this roster, they'd be a dangerous playoff team at the majors, Katowice, Cologne. And I've got to say, I think Madge is one of the biggest issues. But you look at the squad in general, the pieces are there to be excellent. The reality is a travesty. Now, you know you never catch me dolo online because I'm rolling deep and we dem boys. Who am I talking about? The Skrilluminati. So this video and the content on my channel is kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Thooorin, Jensen Goh, Nicky, Jasun. You know who my second in command is, JerCkysMiNi0n. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my content? Would you like to ask me a question in an AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where you get to set the topic? Maybe you want to see who upcoming guests are in my interviews and on my talk shows. Well, all of these perks and more are available to you if you put your money where your mouth is and join the Illuminati today. How? Via the Patreon link in the description box below. You dig?